Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some malicious compliance stories, and our first story of the day is by What the Heck is an Acronym? Give Karen what she asks for, not what she wants. I was working for a well-known warehouse membership-only retail company about 6 or 7 years ago as an AM stalker. Their standard policy is to rotate managers every so many years. We got this one witch-butt manager, we'll call them Bam, who allegedly pulled the gender card to get promoted. And she really acted like the type. Just to give you an idea of the type of person I'm talking about. A serious mega Karen. Among all kinds of new rules she was making up out of nowhere to presumably show dominance over us and our supervisors, was a rule, implemented immediately, that all cardboard from stocking had to go on these 2x1 meter long orange flatbed carts instead of in regular shopping carts. Keep in mind, we started at 4 a.m. and that I was stocking the liquor section on the other side of the warehouse from the cardboard hole. And all my cardboard was small and didn't stack. This rule didn't work for me and I just wasn't having it. I started my tasks and started chucking my cardboard in a cart anyway. Bam came by to remind me to use a flatbed. I calmly and rationally explained and demonstrated why it didn't work for me. She said to do it anyway. So I picked up the cart full of cardboard and placed it on the flatbed sideways and absolutely filled the darn thing until it was taller than I was by wedging huge sheets of cardboard in the sides and filling the middle with the small stuff. Skip forward 2 hours when I'd left this absolute monstrosity out during lunch and I was coming back. Bam is yelling into her walkie-talkie for my supervisor, Andy, to come back and look what I'd done. I was in the next aisle straightening something and trying not to laugh out loud. Andy comes back and he's visibly trying not to laugh while Bam screams about writing me up. He calls me over and I just calmly say, "Well, it's on the flatbed, I don't see the problem." Bam storms off and my manager didn't write me up. That was definitely one of my most satisfying days working there. So let me ask you guys, if you worked for this Bam, would her attitude and management style make you want to try and find all these little innocent enough ways to just totally tick them off without ever giving them a way to properly get you in trouble? Basically exactly like OP did here. Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Successful Medicine 9. Run a youth program that I'm not suitable for? Okey-dokey, boss. For context, I still have a wonderful relationship with this supervisor, though I haven't worked there for years. Behind closed doors, this workplace operated on very direct communication and was truly the closest thing to operating like a family I've experienced positively in a workplace. I was working for a youth-serving after-school organization that is well known in the US. We are located in a rough community that had mostly people of color. My job was primarily to facilitate teen programs, or delegate facilitation where appropriate, schedule teen room staff, provide homework help, and mediate conflicts. This organization was funded through hundreds of grants, many of which required us to have a certain number of youth attend a program a certain number of times. All about quantity, less focused on quality, but it did keep the place running. One day, boss called me, Mike, into his office. He asked me to run a program called Passport to Manhood today with at least 15 teen boys to secure funding. The second and final program would take place next week. I told him that A, I disagreed with the premise of the program and thought it should be called Passport to Adulthood, and B, I was definitely not the right staff member to demonstrate what manhood meant in this community. I pointed out that we had plenty of adults available that would be appropriate, such as the basketball coach or a hardworking dad that volunteered the same day. But boss said, "Do your Mike thing and make it work." Apparently my Mike thing meant being creative, thinking outside of the box, and getting results. Keep in mind, I'm a lanky, long-haired, glasses-wearing white guy with a degree in philosophy and the occasional nail polish on my fingers. I was a good mentor for those teens in many ways, but I came nowhere near what their community considered manly. I already know that this mentality will be a point of contention in the comments, so please don't fixate on this unless you've really lived and worked in one of those communities. It's a complex issue with no simple solution. Enter malicious compliance. I immediately took all of the little workbooks shaped like passports for the program and crossed out and replaced all of the gendered language. Men should into adults should, etc. The program required a talking piece to be passed around so only one person at a time could speak. I picked out my favorite stuffed animal, a unicorn from the 5 to 8-year-old space. I also had to do it for 45 minutes, and the only time that could work that day was during Teen Open Gym. I went and closed off the gym for all the boys and slotted that hour as a girls only time. Side note, the girls were stoked. Now that all of the teenage boys were relegated to the teen room and had an hour of their basketball time canceled, I began the program. I followed the curriculum as best I could, and we all hashed out our stories about manhood, respect, and expectations. Half of the teens didn't participate, but at least sat quietly the whole time. I then offered a free item from the concession stand for the first 2 teens to submit an in-person review to my boss. That was permitted in the curriculum. 2 of them immediately took me up on it and informed boss of how much it sucked. About 10 minutes after finishing the program, boss called me in. He was laughing his butt off. "Okay, Professor Mike, you win. The basketball coach will do it next week. Now get the heck out of my office, you son of a witch." He laughed the whole time as I made my way out. Apparently the teens let him have it. Coach ran it next week, and he did a great job. The teens said they looked forward to doing it again next semester, albeit with him in charge. Oftentimes in situations like this, I can very easily see how you really want to handle it carefully and make sure that it's appropriate for the group of people. I don't think there was anything wrong with what OP did. This next story is by Not a Preppy. I have to use the rest of my vacation time by the end of the year to prevent critical understaffing issues? Okay then. I'm an analytical chemist in the petroleum industry. Boo hiss. I'm attached to a refining pilot plant where we test products related to refining. The data I produce supports various other groups. My lab is staffed by me, senior chemist, and a temp/contractor lab tech, Minion. The Minion does a lot of the day-to-day work with the basic analysis as well as some regular tasks for my boss. I do maintenance, repairs, method development, special project planning, as well as the more advanced analysis, where there's more nuance in the data processing. Due to the global pandemic, an edict came from high up in the corporate pantheon that we weren't allowed to carry over any vacation time this year. I'm usually allowed to carry over 5 days. I guess they're worried about people banking up too much time and leaving various groups critically understaffed when too many people take vacation time at once. Never mind that vacation time has to be approved. This being America with lax labor protections, this is all perfectly legal. Suck it, Europeans, we've got the freedom to be taken advantage of by our corporate overlords. My boss emailed me and said I had 5.5 days left, and she's been told to tell me to use it or lose it. I look at our holiday schedule and figure out that strategic use of vacation and holiday time means I can take 2 consecutive weeks off. I told my boss this and she said, "Well, if they didn't want you to use it all at once, they shouldn't force you to use it all at once." She approved my plan. So the lab will be critically understaffed for 2 weeks, what they were trying to avoid, because I am doing what I was told. The R&D and tech service groups are going to be wanting the analytical results from the pilot plant to crunch on while working from home, since they were required to use up their vacation time as well. Not sure what they're going to do, but it won't be anything that requires data from the pilot plant. That is a good boss right there. Needless to say, if you're going to hang your valuable employees up to dry, I guess you shouldn't be too shocked when they retaliate in some form. And in this case, it just so happens to innocently be exactly what they wanted the person to do. Our next story is by Moose-tastical, overly detailed. I used to work as an hourly technician, bottom rung of the service chain, and we had a repeat customer that would come in for oil and tires. This customer, a Karen, would complain about anything out of place or smudged on her crappy Dodge Magnum. One day she came in for 4 tires, and my service manager asked me to make an account of anything prior to my service. I took 4 hours on her vehicle as she waited on an uncomfortable bench, writing up every smudge and scratch on the exterior of the vehicle. The final report was a 10-page manifesto on her crappy station wagon, after which she never returned. Sometimes the way to deal with a crappy customer, while still being technically polite, is waste their time and make them the ones that voluntarily get out of there. This next story is by the to the M. You have to salute your superior officer. Not my story, but my dad's. Back in the day, there was a mandatory military service of 15 months for all male residents in Germany. My dad enrolled in a university and dodged the service at first. But after he finished his studies, he was ordered to enlist in the Bundeswehr, so he had to go. You could skip military service on ethical reasons, but you then had to do a social service instead, which lasted even longer. Him being a former university student, he was about 6 years older than most of the other recruits and even a bit older than most officers in basic training. He didn't take the military service seriously at all. Here are 2 stories of malicious compliance that made his superior officers hate him by his account. 1. He was ordered to do door duty. He was basically sitting in a glass box, letting anybody in the barracks through a sliding glass door by pressing a button with his right hand. This is important as it was impossible to salute using your right hand and let anyone in at the same time. One morning, he was chewed out in front of everyone for saluting with his left hand. This is apparently a big no-no in German military. Cue malicious compliance. This day, a pretty high-ranking officer, I think 2-star general or something, I don't quite remember, happened to be visiting. The guy walked up to the door, staring at my dad, expecting to get a salute. And that's what my dad did. The guy returned the favor and slammed headfirst into the door he wasn't paying attention to. After that day, people on door duty didn't have to salute anyone before letting them in. From what my dad told me, the general was a good sport about it after he got the explanation why my dad didn't press the button for him. There was simply no way of achieving a proper salute and reaching the button at the same time. 2. There were very strict uniform codes. Under no circumstances was a soldier to be caught outside the barracks with an incomplete uniform. While driving a vehicle, a soldier was not allowed to wear a hat. This day, it was very rainy. A superior officer ordered my dad to drive him to the post office to deliver a load of very heavy and very large packages. The malicious jerk that my dad was at the time, he left his hat at the barracks, since he wasn't allowed to wear it while driving. At the post office, he got the order to carry everything inside. As you might have already guessed, he refused to even exit the vehicle, since he wasn't allowed to step outside with an incomplete uniform. The officer, realizing what my dad did, got really angry and started yelling at him, but there was nothing he could do about it. He couldn't give him his hat, since officers had a different one from the normal soldiers. He couldn't discipline him since he technically only ordered him to drive him to the post office, which did not require to bring a hat. The poor dude had to carry all that stuff on his own, which, to his credit, he did. He never ordered my dad to do any deliveries for him after that. Well, to be fair, that seems like a pretty good way to get your name off of doing extra labor like that. If you comply maliciously and make their lives a little too hard, and you get yourself out of some extra labor you have to do, that's just a plus, right? And our final story of the day is by Ooze and Oz, A Key for a Key. I started working at a retail store a few months ago. Much of our merchandise is locked in display cases, and employees were expected to sign out and sign back in any key and radio at the beginnings and ends of shifts, respectively. I've been the only person at work who cares about precautions, so I tried to always take the same key every day, in the hopes that no one else was handling it. I signed it out, I signed it back in, day out. One day, at the start of my shift, my key is missing. I checked the log, and it wasn't signed out since I'd last returned it the previous day. which meant someone had just taken it, not signed it out, and never returned it. It hasn't been back since, so it's quite gone. I had previously mentioned to management that the key control system was lacking and that keys were going missing. No record, no oversight, no apparent concern. Management shrugged with indifference and made a quip about taking employees' keys in exchange for work keys. 1. I'm not willing to part with either my house or car key to anyone I don't trust. 2. I don't want other employees handling my own personal keys with their plague rat hands. Management eventually implemented the key exchange, and now comes the malicious compliance. I had a key ring with a bunch of extra keys from old hobby locks that had long since been lost, or keys of otherwise little significance. These keys are on several key rings on a carabiner. I loaded as many key rings as I could fit, then I added the biggest padlock I have, then slapped an industrial magnet on the shackle of the lock, then added a lump of wrought iron to the mix to increase the weight to somewhere around 3 pounds. 3 pounds of keys, locks, and just metal. I handed over the pointless keys in exchange for a work key, and the heft was met with at least a Jesus from management. The second day I went to ask for a key, management looked at my key monstrosity as I approached, said never mind, and gave me a key. No one has been asked for keys since, to my knowledge, and there is now no key control whatsoever. So OP complained about there not being any key security. They tried to implement some kind of key security. It's obviously not great, so OP cheeses it and they stop that, and in the end they have even less key security than they started with. It's a malicious compliance alright, but the end result isn't as satisfying as you would kind of hope. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So which of these stories was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and turn notifications on if you haven't so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Any little thing that you do helps the channel grow so much more. Whether it's commenting, subscribing, or just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here on the Storytime channel.